evening was quiet, almost too quiet. I sat on the couch, the television playing some mindless sitcom in the background, but my mind was far from at ease. It wasn't one thing. It was a collection of little things. Amanda, my wife of 7 years, had been pulling away from me. The change was subtle at first. Fewer shared smiles, less laughter, and a growing sense of absence even when she was in the room. But now, her distance felt almost tangible, like a wall I couldn't see but could feel. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was overthinking things. After all, we were both busy. Life is a way of pulling even the strongest connections thin. Yet, no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, a seed of doubt had planted itself in my mind. And that doubt grew with every passing day. That night, Amanda came home late again. The clock had just struck 10 when I heard the faint click of the front door. I glanced up from the book I wasn't really reading, my heart sinking when I saw her. She looked stunning, like she'd just walked off the cover of a magazine. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled, and her outfit, it wasn't something she usually wore for casual outings. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Hey," she replied almost dismissively as she slipped off her heels. She barely looked at me, heading straight for the kitchen. "Late night?" I asked, setting my book down. "Yeah, just a work thing," she said over her shoulder, opening the fridge and pouring herself a glass of water. Her voice was casual, but something about it felt rehearsed. I didn't push. Not then. But I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that had been building in my chest. Work thing? Since when did work things involve dressing up like you're heading to a gala? Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Amanda would leave early, come home late, and offer the same vague excuses. Work meetings, catching up with an old friend, or the classic, just needed some air. The explanations were always accompanied by a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And then I noticed the phone. She'd always been casual with it before, leaving it lying around or charging in the kitchen. But now, it was glued to her hand. She'd step away mid-conversation to answer a call, or disappear into another room to text. Once, I walked into the living room and caught her lowering the phone quickly, like she'd been hiding something. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Of course," she said, her tone too bright, too forced. "Why wouldn't it be?" I nodded, but my gut told me otherwise. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon. I'd left work early, hoping to surprise Amanda with dinner and a quiet night together. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed her car was already there. A small relief washed over me. At least she was home. But when I opened the front door, I was met with silence. No TV, no music, just the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. "Amanda?" I called out. No answer. I walked into the kitchen, expecting to find her sipping coffee or scrolling through her phone. Instead, I found her leaning against the counter, her back to me, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, but the words were unmistakable. "I can't wait to see you tonight," she said, her tone light and flirty. I froze. My stomach twisted into knots. Who was she talking to? My brain tried to rationalize. Maybe it was her sister, maybe it was a joke. But the tone in her voice wasn't one she used casually. It was intimate. Too intimate. I cleared my throat, and she spun around, her eyes wide with surprise. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in," she stammered, quickly ending the call and slipping her phone into her pocket. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Just a friend," she said, avoiding my gaze. "A friend?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "What kind of friend do you talk to like that?" Her cheeks flushed, and she crossed her arms defensively. "It's nothing, Lucas. You're overreacting." I wanted to believe her, to let it go. But the unease was impossible to ignore. Every instinct in my body screamed that she was hiding something. That night, as she got ready to leave again, I made a decision. I couldn't keep sitting in the dark. I needed to know the truth. "Going out again?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, just meeting some friends," she said, grabbing her purse. "Oh," I pressed, my voice firmer this time. She hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "You don't know them." The lie hit me like a slap. I watched her leave, her perfume lingering in the air as the door clicked shut. For a moment, I stood there, paralyzed by doubt and anger. But then, something in me snapped. Enough was enough. I grabbed my car keys and followed her. I followed at a safe distance, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might drown out the sound of her car. She took a few unexpected turns, heading into a part of town we rarely visited. It wasn't long before she parked in front of a small, dimly lit cafe. I pulled into a spot a block away, far enough not to be noticed, but close enough to watch. For a while, nothing happened. Amanda stayed in her car, scrolling through her phone. The tension in my chest grew unbearable, every second feeling like an eternity. Then, out of the shadows, a figure emerged. It was a man, young, probably in his early 20s, with the kind of casual confidence that seemed unearned. He approached her car, and I felt my stomach drop as she rolled down the window, greeted him with a warm smile, and gestured for him to get in. They sat there, talking and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. And then, before I could process what was happening, Amanda leaned over and kissed him. Not a quick, platonic peck. A kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to storm out of the car, demand an explanation, scream at both of them. But I stayed frozen, my mind racing. Confrontation could wait. Right now, I needed proof. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos of them in the car. The flash was off, but every click felt like an explosion. Amanda and the man seemed oblivious, lost in their own little world. After a few minutes, they drove off. I tailed them carefully, my pulse quickening with every turn. They eventually pulled into the parking lot of a modest hotel. My stomach churned as I watched them step out of the car, laughing softly as they walked hand in hand toward the entrance. This was it, the confirmation of everything I'd feared. I took more photos, each one a nail in the coffin of our marriage. They disappeared through the glass doors, leaving me alone in my car, consumed by a mix of fury and heartbreak. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the hotel, replaying every moment of our life together in my mind. How had it come to this? Amanda, the woman I'd built a life with, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, was here, betraying everything we had. When I finally drove home, I felt like a shell of myself. My thoughts were a chaotic storm, alternating between rage and sorrow. But beneath it all, one thing was clear. I couldn't let this go. The confrontation had to happen. When Amanda walked through the front door later that night, her hair slightly disheveled and her face glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months, I was ready. She froze when she saw me sitting in the living room, phone in hand. "Oh, you're still up," she said, her voice light, as if nothing had happened. "I am," I replied, my tone flat. "And I think we need to talk." Her eyes darted to the phone in my hand, suspicion clouding her expression. "About what?" Without a word, I swiped to the photos and held the screen up for her to see. The color drained from her face as she took in the images. Her with the man in her car, the kiss, the hotel. What is this?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "You tell me," I said, keeping my tone steady despite the storm inside me. "Who is he, Amanda? How long has this been going on?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, struggling for words. Finally, she managed, "It's not what it looks like." "Don't insult me," I snapped, standing up. "I saw everything. I followed you. I have the photos. Don't you dare try to lie to me now." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated, my voice rising. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. Sneaking around, lying to my face, and sleeping with another man is not a mistake. It's a choice." She broke down, sobbing into her hands, but her tears only fueled my anger. "Why, Amanda? Why would you do this to us?" "I don't know," she cried. I felt so disconnected. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. And he made me feel seen, alive." Her words cut deep, but they didn't change anything. "You had a choice, Amanda. You could have talked to me. We could have worked through it. But you threw it all away." The rest of the conversation was a blur of accusations, apologies, and anger. By the end of it, we were both emotionally spent. But one thing was clear. There was no coming back from this. "I want a divorce," I said finally, my voice cold and firm. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just nodded, her face a mixture of shame and resignation. The days that followed were a haze of paperwork, cold silences, and bitter realizations. Amanda packed her things with little ceremony, leaving behind the life we had built together. Every room in the house felt hollow, each object a painful reminder of what we'd lost. Or perhaps what I had lost. Because as much as Amanda seemed remorseful, it was clear she had made her peace with walking away. But I wasn't ready to let her betrayal go unnoticed. I had proof, those damning photos, and I wasn't going to keep them to myself. The man she had chosen to ruin our marriage for, Ethan, was our neighbor's son. He wasn't just some stranger. He was someone I had known, trusted, and even helped when he needed it. The betrayal cut even deeper knowing it was someone from our own circle. I decided to visit Ethan's father, Mr. Carter, a kind, hard-working man who had lived next door to us for years. As I knocked on his door, my hands trembled, but my resolve was firm. He answered quickly, his face lighting up with a smile that vanished the moment he saw mine. "Lucas," he said, concerned. "Everything all right?" "Not exactly," I replied, my voice strained. "I think we need to talk." He invited me in, and I wasted no time. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos. The moment his eyes landed on the screen, his face turned pale. "Ethan and Amanda," he muttered, disbelief dripping from every word. "I wish I didn't have to show you this," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "But I thought you should know." He stared at the photos for a long moment, his hands trembling as he held the phone. I don't even know what to say. I had no idea. Ethan's been distant lately, but I never imagined. His voice trailed off, replaced by a heavy silence. I could see the pain in his eyes, the realization that his son had done something unforgivable. "I'm sorry, Lucas," he said finally, his voice low. "I'll deal with this. I promise." I left his house feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that I had confronted the truth, but sorrow for the destruction it had caused, not just for me, but for everyone involved. I knew Mr. Carter would handle it, but it didn't erase the damage that had been done. News of the affair spread quickly through the neighborhood. People whispered, eyes full of pity when they saw me, and barely concealed judgment when Amanda passed by. Her once perfect reputation crumbled under the weight of her actions, and Ethan wasn't spared either. The neighbors viewed him with a mix of disdain and disbelief, a young man who had overstepped every boundary. Amanda tried to salvage what was left of her life, but the gossip was relentless. Invitations to social gatherings stopped, and she was forced to move out of the area to escape the scrutiny. As for Ethan, his relationship with his family became strained. I heard through the grapevine that Mr. Carter had confronted him, and the fallout was explosive. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. The divorce was finalized quickly. I didn't want to drag it out. I kept the house, the car, and most of our shared assets. Amanda left with the bare minimum, a decision I didn't regret. She'd already taken enough from me. But starting over wasn't easy. Every corner of the house reminded me of what had happened. The memories we'd created together now felt tainted, and the silence that filled the rooms was almost unbearable. Yet, I knew I couldn't stay stuck in that pain forever. Months passed, and slowly, life began to feel normal again. I started focusing on myself, picking up old hobbies, reconnecting with friends, and even hitting the gym. For the first time in years, I began to feel like my own person again, unshackled from the weight of a broken marriage. One day, as I was walking through the park, a woman sitting on a bench caught my eye. She was reading a book, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun. There was something about her, calm, grounded, and entirely unpretentious. I hesitated for a moment, then approached her. "Good book?" I asked, motioning to the novel in her hands. She looked up, startled at first, but then smiled. "It's all right. Better than the last one I read." I laughed, and we fell into an easy conversation. Her name was Claire, and there was something refreshingly honest about her. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't feel the need to explain it. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. Amanda's betrayal had been a devastating chapter of my life, but it wasn't the end of my story. It taught me resilience, forced me to confront truths I would have otherwise ignored, and ultimately led me to a place of renewal. While the scars remained, They no longer define me. Sometimes, life is a cruel way of pushing us toward the unexpected. But in those moments of despair, we often find the strength to rebuild, and maybe even discover something better waiting on the other side.